in the vein of like storytelling and also what's happening in the world right now, I think one thing that we need to remember is that everybody's experience is different. And I think the more we start to remember that, the more empathetic we can be towards people and what people are going through, whether it looks like they are um, experiencing some sort of trauma or traumatic, or affected by a traumatic event or not. We never know what's going on with people internally. We never know what's going on with people behind closed doors. So I think it's best to just support each other as best as we can. And yeah, and like stay hopeful and prayerful. Hi everyone, it's Nakia Stephens, screenwriter and founder of Damn Right Originals, and you are now tuned in to So Booking Cool.
That's so motherfucking cool to listen to So Fucking Cool.
Welcome to So Booking Cool. It's Jewel B. Today's special guest is an award-winning screenwriter and indie filmmaker. She is devoted to telling authentic and purposeful stories that disrupt outdated and ill-informed narratives. She has been recognized by the likes of Deadline, Forbes, the American Black Film Festival, and Blavity, to name a few. Her work has been seen on BET, PBS, Aspire TV, and Revolt, to name a few. More than 20 of her scripts have been produced for the screens, including Sugar Water, Novella, and Coffee and Cream, and the new film, Dying to Be Famous. She is the founder and chief creative of the screenwriting label Damn Right Originals and the showrunner and creative executive of KeyTV, the Keke Palmer-led company, which features the new must-see workplace comedy show, Nepotista. Here with us today, she is Nakia Stephens.
Yay! Thank you for that. I always listen when people do intros and I'm like, oh, wow, I did do all of that.
Yes, Nakia, it's a pleasure to have you. You've done so much, and I do want to
hmm
even start off by saying that your work is so excellent. You're
Thank
just
you.
so talented, and you really are like telling stories and adding more like dimension to Black representation when it comes to film and television. So
hmm Thank you. I appreciate that. I truly do. It's so fun. Like I enjoy creating and storytelling, and so um for it to be something I can do for work is very exciting.
how does it feel to do something that you enjoy, but you're also really good at it?
Um, it doesn't really feel like work. I mean, it is definitely hard work, but in the moments where you're in flow and you're just writing and you're just letting your creativity pour out, it doesn't feel like work, especially at least the first draft. And then when you start getting into the other drafts, and then you're like, oh, I've been doing this for about 3, 4 weeks now. But it's very exciting. I enjoy doing it, especially when you complete a script and you get to work with other creatives. I think that's the most rewarding part, is then you get to bring other creatives on to do their best work in their zone of genius on a set, when you have a director or a stylist, a cinematographer, etc. So I don't know. I think it's all very fun, and I think it's a blessing that we get to do this.
Speaking of which, when did you know that this was your path?
Oh, I was always a very imaginative child. I was always writing, always creating, always playing, like make believe. Imagination was like out of this world. So I knew that I wanted to be a creative. And then I think it was maybe like in high school, I did a play. I co-produced a play with my theater class. And I think my teacher introduced the term screenwriting. I had never heard of it before. I knew that I liked writing and I knew that I liked creating. And so once she introduced the term screenwriting and I looked it up and I saw Mara Kill and Shonda Rhimes, I was like, oh yeah, these Black ladies are doing this. I'm gonna do this. And then from there, that was the path.
Who was the first person you told?
Who was the first person I told? I probably told my mom. I probably went home and was like, I'm a big screenwriter. And I don't think she knew what it was either. I think she was just like, okay. Like she was very supportive of anything I wanted to do. And she knew that nothing was going to stop me from doing something once my mind was on it. So I think it was definitely my mother.
Well, that's excellent. It's good to hear because we don't always hear that parents can be supportive when it comes to wanting to do the arts.
Hmm.
Why do you think that is sometimes? What makes the difference between the parents who do support it and the ones that don't?
I think it's at the end of the day, it's all love. I feel like your parents want the best for you. So even when they aren't supportive of their children who want to do creative work, I think it comes out of love and fear. So a fear that you won't be able to make a living, or a fear that this won't get you as far, or maybe a personal fear. Maybe in the past they've tried and they failed, and so they are kind of projecting that fear onto their children. So I think that's the difference. I don't always think it's any malice or ill intent. I think it just depends on like if they are projecting their own fears onto their children. But luckily, I think my mom was a little bit of creative as well. So she was very excited that that's something I wanted to do. And so I looked up and got that. I think my dad was definitely supportive, but he did have moments where he's like, "Do you want to just do something else and then do that on the side?" But I think he's saying that to protect me. Like he definitely wanted to make sure that um I was able to support myself basically. Like in the very beginning when I'm like 20 and I'm like, I'm about to move to LA, and he's like, I don't know. Don't you think maybe you should like stay here and figure it out that way? So he was a little apprehensive. He was never not supportive, just very cautious. And my mom was just like, go and do it. And she's more free-spirited than my dad, but I think both of them helped me to develop like I'm gonna go out here, but I'm gonna make sure I have a plan and I'm gonna make sure I stick to it.
Love to hear that. And you grew up in Atlanta?
Yes, born and raised.
Nice, nice. I know, like, they're proud of you.
Yeah, they are. My dad is always like posting my links and stuff in his Slack channel at work. I'm like, okay. He's
Yes,
like, yeah, my coworker said congratulations. I'm like, thank you, Dad. Thanks.
it's a proud dad. You did your play, as you mentioned, when you were in high school. So
Hmm.
what other work did you do in Atlanta, or did you just start more of your creative work when you transitioned to LA?
Oh no, I want to say Atlanta was definitely an incubator for me. So, um, I did my first feature film, I want to say in 2014. I wrote the feature film, and then once I was done, I rented out a theater. I don't know, first of all, even talking about this, I don't know how I knew to do any of this. I had never done any of it before, but I rented out a theater. It sold out 333 seats. And then, once people saw it and I got the response that I got from my first film, I remember telling people like, oh, that was the day I graduated from being a dreamer to a doer. So you have these thoughts of what you want to do in the dreams and all this stuff, and then you actually do it, and it actualizes, and you see the response to it, then people want to also be a part of it. So I think from that moment people wanted to be a part of what I was doing, and Dan Wright Originals kind of expanded beyond just myself, and it became a collective of creatives who wanted to just create. And so from there, I mean, after the first feature film, I want to say a web series. After web series, I did a short film. Then I did another web series. And then in 2018, I did a short film a month. And this is all in Atlanta. And we don't have any money. So I don't know. I had lots of audacity. I was just like, I was just very resourceful too as a young creative. I was like, if somebody said their uncle had horses, I'm like, we're doing a story about a horse. We're doing a story on a farm. Like I was figuring it out. And I think like that was a good character trait for me to have coming up as a creative in Atlanta, because it allowed me to just create freely without any bounds. I had a story that I wrote. I was just telling someone I had a story that I wrote, and I think one shot that I wrote in the script was like in front of the Eiffel Tower. And I remember reading it to my friend who was a DP, and he was like, "Oh, this is in Paris." And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, guess we got to shoot in Paris. I was like, yeah, I guess so. And I think because I also was working with creatives who were also a little delusional like me, we were able to like really make things happen. We were like young kids. We don't have a lot of money, but we figured it out. Like we went to Paris, we shot it, we put it out, we were winning awards, we were doing a lot. So I think that was like a great time. And Atlanta being an incubator for me really served for the type of creative that I am today. So yeah, I think I owe Atlanta everything, in the creative space in Atlanta because people were so hungry to create. Like it allowed you to have space to volunteer to do things. Like if a makeup artist is like, I'll volunteer, like I'll do it, and they would be amazing, but charging nothing because they wanted to create. I don't think I would have had the same story had I started in LA. I just don't think so.
Is the key to volunteering to do something that you're interested in or passionate about? Is that the key?
I think the key is really, I'm sorry about that. I have a puppy. But no, I think the key is finding something that you're passionate about and um, finding a group of like-minded people and figuring out how you can combine efforts and collaborations. And then that's when you like create something amazing. So, I mean, I feel like eventually you work your way to where you're like, okay, let me start charging for what I'm worth. But I think when you're starting off, it's about finding people who are like-minded so that you all can create a body of work that you're proud of, and then you expand from there. At the time, we were just starting, so we didn't have a body of work. So we were just all like, do you want to direct? Do you want to, put dress people up and put the clothes on them? Okay, you want to act? Okay, I have a script. And then we were doing that and we just did it over and over and over again until we got really good at it. And so I really do think that's the key is like finding people who have a similar mindset as you and then creating from there.
Yeah, that's so well said, Nakia. And you in your bio, it does mention that you have been abroad as well
Mhm.
as other countries. So how has that helped you, and is that something that you encourage other creatives to try to do?
I think so. I think when you spend time in other countries and in other cultures that are different than yours, you um you kind of understand the universal storytelling aspect of like human nature. Um, because even though we have different culture, we all experience grief, we all experience love, we all experience loneliness, etc. And so spending time in those different spaces and getting to know different people and about them and their family and like how they grew up, it just kind of like fueled my storytelling bank. And so now I'm able to write more rich worlds, and create characters that are a little bit more dynamic because I'm introduced to more people and more spaces and more cultures. So I do encourage people to study abroad or to visit different places or spend time in different spaces and amongst different people and indulge in different cultures, etc.
When did you start Damn Right Originals? And also, when did you know what? Like, I'm really take off.
Oh, so Downright Originals was started in 2014. That same year is when I did my first feature film. Um, and so after that, like I said, that was my graduation from being a dreamer to a doer. And then we just started to create more and more from there. And I guess the moment I really was like, oh, we're about to take off is um, I don't know. I had a lot of different moments along the way where I'm like, oh, wait, people really love this. But I think one of the biggest moments is when we got our first development deal. And this was like at the end of 2018, after we had done a short film a month. And then we hosted a screening for all of the films that we did over the year. And there were a few executives there. And one of the executives was an executive at Aspire TV. And so after, they had seen our screenings, they contacted us, set up a meeting, and they offered me and Dan Red Originals a development deal. And so in my mind, I'm like, oh, they were so impressed they were so impressed by what we were able to do as new creatives with very little money And for it to look as good as it did, they were very impressed that they offered us a development deal to do the same thing for their network. So I think that was a moment where I was like, oh, okay, wait, like this is about to go to another level. And it did. And even from there, we got another development deal from what we were doing with Aspire and like winning NAACP Image Award nominations and like just being in these different rooms and then Forbes contacting us and all of this stuff. So I was like, okay, everything that we're doing is reaping the next thing. So that was definitely a moment.
As you continue to pivot, I'm sure that like your skill set, you just continue to like develop and develop your skill set. But what other things did you have to learn as you continue to pivot?
Um, as I continue to pivot, one thing writing wise, like skill set that I tell people is that the more I developed as a person and allowed myself to be my full self as a person, the better my writing got. So certain characteristics about myself that maybe I suppressed or certain things, that I didn't allow to come out, or if I was just being half of myself and not expressing my full self, um, you could see that in my writing. So the more I became myself, the more my characters were able to be like well-rounded characters. So that's one thing I learned over time, and that got better. And also the better I got with expressing like emotion or experiencing emotion, the better I got with storytelling as well. So um that was like I feel like that was a real big aha moment for me. I'm like, oh, okay.
Wow. You know, a lot of people can say that they can tell that they don't really feel something.
hmm
But what does that look like exactly?
Yeah. I think if we experience an emotion and we don't feel it, we just think it. I am that's one thing I will say about myself early on. It's like if I'm experiencing an emotion, I'd rather think through it than to feel through it. So if I were upset with you or you said something that hurt my feelings, I wouldn't just sit in my feelings being hurt. I would just be like, well, she said this thing. Maybe I just don't like her anymore. And I move on. Instead of just sitting here like, okay, she said this thing. Did she mean this thing? What does this thing mean to me? Why did it give me that reaction? Like, why did now I'm feeling it. I'm going deeper and I'm trying to ask myself these things and feeling the things.
Mhm.
Um, so I think that's what people mean when they say like, you don't really feel something.
So is it better to think it through, you think, or is it better to feel it?
I
It
think both. I naturally think things through. I've had to learn to feel things through because just I'm a natural person that's just like, let me think about this. But I've grown to learn to do both. So to think about it, but also to let myself feel it and then think through it before reacting. I think that's the best thing. So feel it, but think through it before reacting.
I love that. Nakia, you once said in terms of advice for young
hmm
women pursuing filmmaking is to do your own research and create while you wait for your next big opportunity.
hmm
What inspired those words? You know, because those
hmm
are full of wisdom. And is that still your advice to this day?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people just wait around for people to give them an opportunity, but then when the opportunity comes, they're not prepared for it. So they're like, oh, I have an opportunity. Oh, wait, I didn't write anything, or I don't have any ideas. And I always say, like, you should always be creating, you should always be thinking about what you want to write, and writing it, so that when your opportunity comes, you can take advantage of it.
How did KeyTV show up in your life? And tell us about, yeah, and the work,
Yeah.
fabulous work.
Just what I was saying, I was that happened because I had already had a pilot script ready and I was doing a prep book for it. So my friend who was a photographer was taking photos for me to put into the pitch deck for the thing that I had already written. So we take photos, etc. Come to find out, he's very close friends with Kiki. So I think some weeks pass. Kiki texts him and just says, hey, I'm trying to start a platform. I'm trying to do something really cool. what do you know any creatives that have work that's already ready? So that I mentioned that before, like already being ready. And so he's like, oh yeah, I actually just took some photos for this girl named Nakia. She's like really cool. Her project is really fun. I think you'd love it. And he texts me and he's like, hey, can I send this to Kiki? I'm like, yeah. Mind you, we had just did the deck. It's only done because I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. I'm not gonna wait for anybody. So I already had things to send. So he sends that over. He sends the pitch, I mean, the pilot episode. And I want to say 2 days later, they are like, I love this. Want to set up a meeting. We set up a meeting a week later. And then a week after that, we have a deal to do Ho and Tell. So we did Ho and Tell. After Ho and Tell was done and it like got great reviews and people loved it, they offered me like a multi development deal to do 3 more projects. So like it just I think like I try to tell people everything that I've been able to achieve in life has come from me already doing and being caught in the act of already doing and being prepared for it.
And clearly, like people notice, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Is hotels coming back that you know?
Oh, but tell, I would like for it to. I would love for it to. I think people really enjoyed it. It was very fun. So maybe.
So how did Nepotista come to, your brain and everything? What was the inspiration? It is so funny. And people love workplace shows as well.
Yeah.
And this does not disappoint at all.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. No, I think we were actually at Soho, me and Kiki and Lenora, who was an exec at KeyTV, and we were like celebrating me coming on board for, another multi-project deal.
Mhm.
And we were just talking about ideas, and I was like telling him about, I was like, oh, I think I have this idea to do something like a writer's room, like based on a writer's room. And we all were just so excited about it. And we were just talking and talking and talking. And I think like 2 days later, I did this treatment and I'm like, okay, this is the idea fleshed out. And I sent it over and they thought it was great. And she was like, okay, this has to be one of the 3 projects, in your deal. And I'm like, let's do it. So that's how, I mean, it was as simple as that. It was when everything is aligned, it kind of just flows. It's not forced at all. And I think that this is one of those projects.
How would you say that you and Key TV and Kiki Palmer are aligned?
I think Kiki and I are very compatible when it comes to like creative and ideas. Every like we get to riff off of each other when there's an idea and like we just have like that alignment in that way. And so it flows well when I come to them with ideas. She's like always down for it and she always adds to it. She's like, oh, and this can happen and this can happen because we tend to be aligned in our ideas and our thought process behind creatives. Um, and I think KeyTV is a perfect platform for it. And it's one that I'm used to. It's like I'm used to being able to have an idea and to put it out, right? Like I told you, that's how we kind of got started. And so I appreciate that with KeyTV. And I think the only difference is now it's more structured and we have a bigger budget and a bigger platform to kind of amplify the stories that we're trying to tell.
What has been the response so far, and what is the takeaway that you want people to have from Nepotista and any of the projects that you have from Damn Right Originals and Key TV?
I was just talking to somebody. I was just telling my friend, and head of development at Damn Right that I don't like to dictate how people feel about anything. I just hope they feel something and I hope they feel it strongly. So with Nepotista, it's honestly a silly idea that I had, and I'm blessed to be able to have a silly idea and to be able to be like, I want to do this and to be able to do it. Um, and so people have been enjoying it. They'll DM me or they'll write in our comment sections and talk about what characters they appreciate, what characters they align with. And I love listening to it. I love listening to what they think, who they hate, who they love, what they predict. So I just want people to take what they need from projects. I don't like to dictate that.
When it comes to like creating that's so deep, by the way, Nakia.
Thank you.
Of course, yeah, sure. When it comes to putting the scripts together for like Nepotista,
Mhm.
how do you decide this is just enough for the amount of time that I have? Is it ever hard?
It's not, it has become easy only because I come from a world of short form. Like I said, when we first started and we were doing our short films, these were projects that were like less than 20 minutes, sometimes less than 10 minutes. So I had to figure out how to tell a story that's rich enough for people to like continue to watch and tell it quickly. So having these episodes be about 10 to 12 minutes, it's very simple. Um, it's not simple, but it's a practice that has been it become like I just got better. So it doesn't get easier, I just get better at doing it. It's definitely difficult. But yeah, I've figured out the formula to doing it.
And for those that don't know, of course, tell us the heart and soul of Nepotista.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a story about failing forward. And like nepotism, with nepotism, we hear a lot about like white nepotism. So I did want to tell a story about black nepotism because it's something that I'm very interested in. And people don't talk about it. Like we have our Zoe Kravitz, our Blue Ivies, all these, Nepo babies that we love. And so I wanted to create a world where we talk about nepotism in a comedic way that involves Black women, especially a character like Rhonda Rivers, who's like sort of like this Shonda Rhimes type of character. And then imagine if Shonda Rhimes has a daughter who has no idea what she's doing. She's a party girl. And now all of a sudden she wants to join her mother's world. So I mean that's mainly what it is. It's like this girl who has no idea what she's doing, and gets the opportunity of a lifetime, and she forms this group who kind of knows what they're doing, but their leader doesn't, and so they're failing forward, and it's just a silly downhill journey towards success, honestly.
And would you say that it's the universe of Riverworld?
Um, I would say it's a parallel universe of River World, because River World is something that Rhonda created, and she like hands the keys to her kingdom to her daughter who has no idea what she's doing. So it's like every episode we're seeing her almost crash and burn. So I think that's what's intense about it, but it's also what's funny about it, that we're just holding our breath. So yeah.
I can't wait to see what's going to happen next because that was absolutely hilarious. She's doing the interview and gets asked about Nikki. Are those partying days before her and then going into
And
the
she's like, oh, she's professional. Then you see everything. It's like, no, she's not.
that was hilarious. Like
Hmm.
even my dad loved that. He loves like television and stuff. But yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So can't wait to see what's going to happen next with that. Of
Thank you.
course. Of the different hats that you wear, do you have
Hmm.
a favorite?
Do I have a favorite? I think my showrunner hat is my favorite. It's the hardest, honestly, but it's my favorite because I do like to just build things out and align people how they need to be aligned. It on set. So being able to pick the person who could do somebody's hair particular in a particular way is very fun to me. Also being able to like follow color theory with the director of photography or with the director is very fun to me. So it's a very hard job, but I think that it's worth it for sure because the it's rewarding. At the end of the day, you get your results and you're like, okay, I had literally my hand in every part of this, and now I've been able to have this come from the page and to on the screen. So I would say that.
Because you had a hand, speaking of the hats, you had a hand in the cast for Nepotista, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
I
and
actually didn't even we didn't even do a casting like call for Nikki. I just like text my friend who I think is so animated, and she's an actress, and I was just like, "Hey, do you want to do this? Because I think this is you." And she's like, "Absolutely." And so we went from there.
oh yeah, she's a natural. You would think she's
Yeah. Yeah. She
very
has such a bubbly personality. I knew she would do good.
Oh wow. So you're also a reader. You,
Hmm.
you love to read and you did create even novella,
Hmm.
a bookish short film. So
Hmm.
what do you enjoy most about reading and what makes a book your favorite?
What I enjoy the most about reading is like it depends on if I'm reading like fiction or nonfiction. So if I'm reading fiction, I enjoy being able to like read and try to imagine how these different characters look. Because there's a difference between reading and watching something. You have a visual to match the script. But a book, you literally have to like figure out what you think that is based on what the words are telling you. So I think that's my favorite part. If I'm doing nonfiction, if I'm learning something, that can easily make something my favorite. Like if I have moments where I'm like, oh, I didn't know that, or if it's something, some knowledge that I can apply immediately, it can make something my favorite. And I tend to like things that are very like explain psychology or science. I'm a little nerdy. So if a book can do that, it's immediately my favorite.
You want to share a recommendation at all?
Oh yeah, I can recommend. I always tell people Outliers. That's like number one, hands down, my favorite. I don't know what it is about the book. I just love it. So that is one. And let's see, let me try to find a fiction book that I recommend. Right, I want to say Vanishing Half, but no, you know what?
Mhm.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, um, The Water Dancer was really good. Yeah, I don't think I've ever like cried reading a book, like really cried. Like I'll like have a tear, like dang, that was sad. But that book, I was like, oh my God, this is a lot. It was really good.
I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah.
Would you ever write a book?
I've been thinking about it. I have been thinking about it. One of the projects that I'm writing now is like a dark comedy, and in my mind, I was like, this could be a book first, and I can just like take the IP and then make it a project, see how that goes. So maybe, I
You
don't know.
you already are, a writer, and it's
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah,
What
maybe I'll take a swing at it.
Yes, you should. You should. So, what's the best piece of advice that you could give a writer? Is there any best piece of advice that you received as a writer?
Best piece of advice that I've received as a writer. I sat down recently with Mara Brakakil because I was a artist in residence at her lovely writers colony, and I remember us talking, and I was telling her how I like to like kind of binge fun and binge experiences and then go dark. And she was just like, "That's perfect." She was like, "I think you should always have your rituals and always have like your space where you can fully dive into your creativity." But I would say I think one thing that writers don't think about is how much discipline you have to have. They think it's just fun and rainbows and just being creative. And it's like, no, there are days that you don't feel like writing and you have to. So I think people have to make sure that they remember to stick to the plan and not to their feelings when it comes to like what you're supposed to be doing in the discipline part of it. So if you have a script to finish, you need to be telling yourself, I need to write 5 pages today. So even if one day the pages are shitty, you wrote your 5 pages. You if you get into the practice of doing that, then you start to see results. And so that's the like more militant, like disciplined version of me who's like, that's my advice. I'm not really about to give you any foo-foo shishi advice. I'm about to give you advice that's like you need to be writing. But yeah, so that's what I would say.
Great piece of advice. And also, Nakia, you did take the time to do this interview, in California. You were able to evacuate, but
Hmm.
again, just like thank you and sending prayers continuing to you and everybody who's been affected or impacted by this.
Hmm.
And just what are just some words that you would like to share like as this is happening?
Yeah, I think that in the vein of like storytelling and also what's happening in the world right now, I think one thing that we need to remember is that everybody's experience is different. And I think the more we start to remember that, the more empathetic we can be towards people and what people are going through, whether it looks like they are experiencing some sort of trauma or traumatic, or affected by a traumatic event or not. We never know what's going on with people internally. We never know what's going on with people behind closed doors. So I think it's best to just support each other as best as we can. And yeah, and like stay hopeful and prayerful, honestly.
There you have it, Nakia Stephens, everyone. You're so booking cool. You
Thank you.
give yourself
I like that.
and I like that you agreed to come on the show. I loved having you
Hmm.
as a guest. And you have to tell us the best way to keep up with you and the projects that are coming up, in addition to the ones that we have talked about already.
Yeah, so Nepotista for sure. And then we are preparing to shoot our next project with KeyTV, which is Southern Fried Rice. So I'm excited for you all to hear more about that. And then you can definitely keep up with us on socials, our website, danwriteoriginals.com, Danwrite Originals, on socials, and then me, Screenwriter.
Guys, make sure you definitely do that. And to all the viewers, the listeners, until next time, so booking cool.